Liz Barletta from the Barletta team at Ligris, your real estate attorney, and I'm super excited to have these amazing professionals with me. First and foremost, I have Joanna Edwards from Thumbprint Realty. Hi, Joanna.
Hi, Liz. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm so excited to be here with you all.
Same. And we have Nick Caliendo from Movement Mortgage. What's going on, Nick?
Thanks so much for having me, Liz. Not much. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah. So just kind of wanted to jump in a little bit. I want everybody to learn who you both are. And obviously we could talk for hours, but just in a little bit, if Joanna, you can kind of just give me a little bit of intro, sort of how you got into real estate and with Thumbprint.
Yeah, for sure. So Thumbprint Realty was founded by myself and my husband about 7 years ago, boutique brokerage in Boston. And so my husband's been in real estate for about almost 20 years or so. And I kind of dove into real estate a little later in the game. My first introduction to real estate was when I purchased my first investment property about 8 years ago. And I was like, okay, maybe, we could do this. My husband was my agent, but he wasn't my husband at the time. I was, you know what, maybe, I see you making money in this industry. So, after we got married, I got my license, and it was about maybe 2 years to the day that I quit my job, my 9 to 5 to do real estate full time. But I've been doing real estate for about 7 years. So I was doing a little bit of both. I was working my 9 to 5. I was in a completely different field, human services, working with domestic violence survivors, and working with in a whole different realm, but still serving people, still serving my community in a capacity in which I loved. And so doing both really helped me understood that I could really control my time. I could really control my finances. I can control my independence in terms of, how I choose to make a living and help folks. And I grew an extreme passion for real estate. And not only in the selling and buying aspect, but in the education component. And, on Thumbprint Realty is really big on providing financial literacy, providing information when it comes to home ownership, how to leverage home ownership, and most importantly, closing the wealth gap. Obviously, generational wealth can be built with owning real estate. So that's kind of in a nutshell, really how, my intro to real estate started. And, I've been doing it since.
I love that. I love that story. Thank you for sharing. And Nick, how about you? What got you into mortgage financing?
So a lot like Joanna, I was in a completely different field. I joined the industry in 2017. Prior to mortgages, I was an electrician and a musician, and music was what I was really going for. As you know, it's pretty tough to make it and to make money and to get by. And I'm not the type of person where you send me outside for 5 hours by myself and I'm gonna enjoy it. So I got introduced through a friend who at the time had been in the business for about a year. Had about a 10-minute conversation with him about what a day in the life looks like, and I was like, I've set me up. I've got to do this, and since then it's been a really quick, a really fast learning process. Actually, Joanna's office, Thumbprint Realty, they were my first relationship as a brokerage. I saw what they did online. I felt like what their mission was really in line with mine, and I was like, I got to surround myself with people like this.
I love, by the way, the fact that you both have worked together in different capacities previously, that you had your own, separate sort of careers that then brought you into real estate, but similar mission, like you mentioned, Nick. And I think that's huge because I think people in this industry, there are a lot of loan officers, there are a lot of realtors, there are a lot of real estate attorneys, but it's the what drives you. And if the driving force is education, to educate buyers, to make sure they feel comfortable, and it's coming from like that place of contribution versus just, more selfish, I guess. I think that's what brings the longevity in this business, because people can see how you're authentic and like really wanting to help. And that's what I loved also about, Nick, you mentioned what Joanna was doing online. Like that was huge because I feel similar. Like I like to teach. Some real estate attorneys, they dislike the first time home buyer because they have all the questions, or they have no questions and you have to kind of get it out of them, And I thrive on that because it's like you're actually having one of the biggest impacts on that person's life for their future. And they may not realize it then, but when they're older and they're looking back and like what they've been able to accomplish, it's like a very satisfying feeling. So I love that. And I love that that's kind of both your sort of your standpoints. We'll
And
talk.
Nick, I never knew you were an electrician in your
Oh yeah, I was in the electricians union. I was in the electricians union, and I quit. I quit to get set up with the mortgage test. I didn't even wait till I passed. I quit.
You
And then
committed. You're like, yeah.
I quit. I studied for a few, did the class, studied for a few weeks, and did the test.
That's
and
amazing.
my whole family thought I was crazy. Everyone in my life thought I was crazy at the time.
Wow.
Best thing I ever did.
Sometimes those are the best decisions where everyone's like,
Yes.
you're going to do something different or like outside of the box. Those always
Yeah.
the best decision.
Well, through doing that too, I kind of like the student teacher thing. I was able to buy a home within 2 years, 3 years of starting the business, and to be able to, that was something I never thought was in my cards, and to be able to take that, share it with other people, it does have that it's kind of like a natural, genuine thing you want to share, and you want to help someone else do it.
I love that.
Yeah,
Well,
Joanna.
Speaking to
something new every day.
Yeah.
You do. I love that. And that's why I love these types of conversations. You never know what you get. You never know what little tidbits you learn. But just generally for those watching, presumably first-time home buyers, they're like, where do I even start? What's the process look like? Joanna, can you maybe talk through like when you first get introduced to a buyer or they reach out to you, like what could a buyer expect from the process?
Yeah, I speak to everyone like, the home buying process is a foreign language. Even if you're, seasoned in the process, I really try to meet my clients where they're at in terms of providing information. I know it can be extremely overwhelming. It can be, using jargon that people don't understand. I use scenarios a lot. I use analogies a lot just to kind of really get people to understand. And I like to walk through the process from the very beginning and set realistic expectations. And oftentimes, as agents, we do this a million times a day, right? Clients, they're experiencing it for the first time. So we can't treat clients like, because we've experienced it a million times, that they've experienced it a million times. So there's a level of patience, there's a level of grace and understanding that you have to have, and understand that this is the biggest decision that they're making of their life. So you have to kind of, reframe your mind like, yeah, I may have had like 20 closings the past few months and whatever the case may be, and I may sound like a robot, but you really need to understand that everything you're saying to that person is valuable. And so I take the time and I always kind of check myself, like, listen, no question is a dumb question. We're not expecting you to be experts, and anything that you need, we'll break it down from beginning to end. I'm a big avid believer that no money should be left on the table. So the first time I meet with clients, I try to figure out how can I get you some more money? How can I save you some money? If I know about a resource where there's down payment assistance or a lender program that's offering incentives, I'm going to be the first one to say, all right, I know this is what you've been told. Here's how I can add value to that. And I think that's how I'm able to create a lot of genuine relationships with my clients, because a lot of agents can, tell you what the process is, but not many can add value in a sense of helping you save money, getting you connected to a wonderful lender who can build amazing relationships with you, getting you access to city resources, city fundings, or additional first-time home buyer programs that I myself have built relationships with as an individual to be able to provide this value to my clients. So I think when meeting with a first-time home buyer, my first thought is, how can I bring value to this conversation and to your experience as a first-time home buyer, and not just kind of throwing a bunch of jargon and information at you, but more so, how can I make the best experience and also adding value as well?
I love everything you said, because I think the key in working with agents throughout the years in this business, it's the agents that are the most successful and the ones who have clients who are raving fans are the ones who are setting those realistic expectations from the get-go. Because sometimes that's an uncomfortable conversation for some people to have. Some agents don't have the personality to be able to explain that in a way that's not going to scare the buyer, but just inform the buyer. So, I mean, the fact that you have that ability is huge, because then they know exactly what they're in for, and that's really going to be the tone setter for the entire transaction, which is amazing.
Absolutely. Setting the tone right out the gate, and not in a condescending way at all.
Right.
And it's just really more like, I value your time and I value my time. And I really want to make sure that from the very beginning, we're kind of eliminating any potential errors that can be made, any misconceptions, any myths, and really just kind of go off the in best faith understanding and understanding the process so that, you're like, oh my God, this whole time I thought I had to put down 20% and you never informed that. I'm not a lender, but I have common sense enough to be able to tell you that, hey, that's not true. You know what I mean? So I think just being able and having great partnerships like Nick and other lenders and other city programs where I have strong partnerships where I can get on a call and like, hey, I'll have this person break down everything for you in terms of what you'll need to know and weigh out your options and really try to think best on what will work for you.
I love that. Awesome. Well, Nick, kind of talking in the same vein, like what is something that buyers can expect in working with you? Sort of how does the process begin? Maybe once Joanna refers you.
Yeah, especially with first-time buyers, I think it's important for me to be an extension of Joanna, and that's why we work well together. I think we care about the same things when it comes to the client experience.
Mhm.
And as a first-time buyer, it's super confusing to know what's what when you're first starting to dive in. And some people do their research. They do their, hey, I did my home buyers course last year, or I read this online. And that's always great. I love those folks because their curiosity kind of feeds into what I do. But I always explain, if we're doing a pre-approval, this is like your own tailored first-time buyers course, because a lot of the times you go online, you're reading all this stuff that may or may not apply to you. It's great info for first-time buyers, and you might learn something, but it's very generalized. It's very blanketed. When we're making that introduction, we're doing a pre-approval, I always explain to them, hey, we're only talking about you, your goal, your budget, what you want. It's a lot easier to learn in that setting, one-on-one, than trying to get all of your info online. So because mortgages aren't a one-size-fits-all thing. There's different products for different goals, and it's navigating, once you take an application, what makes sense for you. So usually after we take an application, I'll weed out what definitely doesn't apply, give an option or two or three, and say, this is what I think is best, and here's why. But here's a couple of other ways to look at it. Yeah. And I think by the end of a pre-approval, by the time someone's starting to look, they're really set up and feeling more comfortable for that next step when they get back to Joanna.
I like that because I think that there is the misconception potentially for a lot of people that it's like kind of like a one size fit all, like Joanna mentioned it, like 20% down, like this is the program, but there's so much more to that. And I think it's always that double-edged sword when you do have clients who come with information, whether it be through online or like, oh, my friend just did this, they told me that I could do this. Well, you don't make the same as your friend, or you may be 1099 versus W2. Like there's so many things that are so specific. And I feel like sometimes the reason why I think these videos are so important is for people to just call and find out. Call Joanna, call Nick, find out if you can buy a home or if you can't right now. And if you can't, like, what can you do to get there? Because just because even like literally this friend who's next to you in a cubicle, you work for the same company, he may not have been able to buy a home, but you could. You just don't know until you actually investigate for yourself. So I think that's such an important message for people to understand and hear, is that it's a tailored approach. It's specific to you. It's not just the general sort of information that's out there.
Right.
Yeah. And also what I love about working with Nick too is that, and the same goes with lenders as well, like that level of patience. They pulled 1 million loans. And so, no question is like a dumb question. He explains it thoroughly. He has patience. I know a lot of lenders who just like, listen, I'm bogged with emails. I don't have time to sit down and speak with a first-time home buyer and explain something I've explained 1 million times. And I also think it's not about what you explain, it's about how you explain it. And I think you can throw information at buyers. If they're not able to receive it and retain it, you're wasting your time. So I think the value in working with Nick too, and I'm very intentional about, when I send clients to Nick too, because I'm like, I know Nick can handle this one, this is a Nick client, because this client's going to need that support. the level of responsiveness. I have clients who are very particular. You're a minute late to a call or an email or whatever the case may be, and they're ready to lose their mind, right? So I think I'm really diligent about a level of customer service that a lender or an attorney or whomever I refer, because I think that really matters to clients about not, again, what they're told, but how they're told it, and the level of care and information that they're providing in that manner that they're provided that information to. So I think that's just as valuable as the level of expertise that person has too.
Yeah, I say it all the time, like the majority of the time, a person can get through a home buying process. The theme is the same, obviously, the specifics are different, but you can trudge along a home buying process. But do you want an exceptional home buying process tailored to you for you to actually feel in control as a buyer? Then you need to surround yourself with people who can cater to that sort of, not just personality, but like everything, communication, the way you speak, the way you can explain something. Again, I feel like from a teacher's heart, right? Like if you're coming from that perspective, people feel that. And maybe speaking to like nowadays, sort of the market that we're encountering. So you've gone through sort of how you start a process generally, but in this market, what are you seeing that's a little bit different, or it's a competitive market, inventory, like what are you seeing out there in terms of sort of what a buyer should really be expecting?
Yeah, I mean the inventory is scarce. That's just what it is. The inventory is scarce. I think a lot of sellers are just really nervous about putting their homes on the market. The uncertainty of the market with the interest rates and inventory, because most sellers need to buy as well, in addition to selling, whether it's downsizing, relocating, and there's a lot of fear surrounding if they're going to find something when they put their home on the market, and if it's worth it with what they're currently paying or what their interest rates are locked in. So, oftentimes with the scarcity of the market, I have conversations with buyers right at the gate, and I say, setting realistic expectations as well. Some clients, they have a checklist where it's like, I want it to be turnkey, I want it, I want a full inspection. I want to take my time with closing. I want to do this, that, and the third. And I'm very realistic about what the market's calling for, and versus, what state we are. I'm like, it's definitely a seller's market at the moment. So we need to be very flexible going into, when we're going into looking at homes and we're going in putting in offers. And what are your, deal breakers? What are your absolute deal breakers when putting an offer on a home? And what are we going to do to be proactive to put ourselves in the best position to leverage this home? Whether it's doing pre-inspections, right? So that if you want to waive an inspection, you're able to at least go in with the mindset of knowing what needs to be done prior to. How can your lender provide incentives in terms of either a quick close, right? Or before, pre-commitment letters was a big thing that doesn't really matter as much to sellers. How do you have a lot of skin to put in the game in terms of like a significant down payment? And are we able to offer any incentives to the sellers in terms of, sometimes as an agent, little gem I'll pay for moving costs, right? Or I'll offer an incentive of my commission to the seller just to make the offer a little bit more attractive. Putting in offers prior to, like this past weekend, I got an offer accepted and had them cancel the open house, because I was able to really think strategically about what this home calls for and what it needs. I'm like, all right, for example, this home needs a little bit of work, and it's a gamble for the seller. I'm like, you could either get about 20 or 30 buyers in there who are going to either lowball you or probably, throw a lot of inspections at you. My client is an experienced buyer. They've been homeowners before. They come from a family of carpentry. They had a vision for this home. We offered a significant amount of money prior to over asking, and we waived inspection and said, hey, cancel the open house. They were trying to, pull our hand. And I said, listen, you have a 2-day open house. I'll give you up until a couple of hours after your first open house that our offer will expire. If you don't give us a response before the end of the day, we're taking our offer off the table and we're not resubmitting. Literally 15 minutes before our deadline, the seller called us with an accepted offer and they canceled the open house. Because you have to think realistically as an agent, like, wow, this home needs work. They offered $45,000 over list price. They're going straight to PNS. Do I really want to take my chances and lose this offer and have another open house tomorrow with the risk of not potentially getting an offer at all or anything is close? So everything is all about strategizing. It's really about just thinking about what the seller wants and how we can give them what they want without compromising the integrity of the buyer. Every situation is different, but I can tell you that I always have my thinking cap on and thinking about, how can we make this work out for both parties and make it attractive without disrespecting the sellers, without lowballing them, but also not compromising the integrity of the buyer. So really, I've noticed in this market, it's just really a lot of strategizing, trying to use a lot of tactics, trying to pull everything out that I can possibly think of to make it as attractive as possible and try to get ahead of the other buyers.
I love that. And I think that that's totally in line with like everybody is invested, I think, in helping our buyers as much as possible. Like it's, whether it's, hey, Liz, here's like some language that we want to add to an offer. Can you take a look at it before? Like most attorneys, generally get involved later or whatever, having Nick be able to like get an updated pre-approval quickly, like all of those things contribute. Timelines. Like I love the fact that Nick can close things, generally speaking, very quickly. So long as buyers do everything they're supposed to do, right? But like that all contributes to like the strength of an offer. Nick, what do you think in terms of what you're seeing in terms of the market right now and like how it's impacting you and how you're interacting with buyers?
I'd say probably the biggest the biggest hurdle right now that's been a theme. It's always been a theme, but especially right now is having buyers trying to decide, should I buy now or should I wait? I'm not comfortable in this payment. I want to wait for rates to come down. And there's been buyers on the sidelines for a year or two now that maybe got pre-approved a couple years ago that are in that boat. They're just waiting. So that has been a tricky thing to navigate because, Joanna knows, I know, like none of us really know exactly where the market's going. We have low inventory. So we're all still kind of looking at the same houses. There's still some level of competition, but in terms of how it's been the last few years, competition is probably at its lowest point right now. So I think, coming up with ways to alleviate the payment, that's been a big thing this year. Doing things like 2-1 buy downs or 1-0 buy downs, trying to prepare people for when rates do come down. What's going to happen with all those buyers that have been waiting?
Right.
Is it going to be like when, the COVID years where you had 30 offers on every house? You try to save that interest rate point, but you end up making up for it on the sales price by sales prices getting driven up. So that's a tough conversation to have with buyers because, in the end of the day, it's a really tough market. If you're brand new, it's hard to just dive in and get used to it. But trying to save a client from getting dragged into the deep end next year or the year after, but while also not, trying to get them into a house that they're not comfortable with or a payment they're not comfortable with.
It's like a dance. Because you don't want to feel like you don't want to be pushy in any way, but at the same time, you want them to have all the information and understand, like, if you don't, like, you're guaranteed to pay this amount of rent, and you're guaranteed that that's not going to be in your bank account anymore, and it's not in any kind of asset for you, right? But it's also kind of a scary thing for some buyers to like take that.
Right, and the industry tends to come up with little nuggets when when we hit a tough spot. The industry knows, hey, payments are really high, so we need a little solution, something that we can use for a little while to alleviate that. Which is why this year we just saw such an uptick in things like 1-0 buy downs, 2-1 buy downs, 3-2-1 buy downs. And a lot of those times we need seller credits to cover those things. Which is where it almost works against what Joanna's trying to do by making a really competitive offer. So it's been challenging, but nonetheless, if there's a lot of folks that are comfortable, getting someone not think about rate as much, think about payment. If you're comfortable in the payment, who cares what the rate is? If the payment makes sense, who cares what the rate is? Eventually we're going to refi.
Yeah, because it's just sometimes the sticker shock. It's not necessarily because it means anything to them, but it's just like, but wait,
Yeah.
shouldn't be that much or whatever. But like the payment is fine. So it's like getting them off of that like gut reaction.
Right.
Yeah, I totally get
And
that.
because of this, I'm seeing a lot more multifamily purchases for first time buyers, a lot more.
Mhm.
It's starting to make a lot more sense for, you know, people to say, hey, you
Which
know,
I love, by the way. I love
yeah,
that. I wish when I first bought my house, I bought a multifamily, so I could have, you know, had a lower down payment on a property that was income. I mean, there's so many benefits. Like, I wish I knew more about real estate when I first bought my house, because that would have been such a. Again, it's kind of like going back to what Joanna said at the beginning, like building generational wealth. Like that is such a great starting point. But sorry, PayPal.
yeah, no,
That's good to see that that's kind of where people are going.
right.
Like, do you think that more people, like, obviously HGTV and all, like everyone sees everything beautiful and finished and redone and new? Like, do you feel like a lot of first-time home buyers are getting to the point that they're understanding, well, it may not be that, but I can get it to that if I buy something that is sort of lower on my price range?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, coming with the developing experience, my husband being a developer and us doing flips and working on our own projects, I come in with that perspective of being able to give my clients that vision and saying, hey, we can, open up this wall, we can, create a third bedroom here, things of that sort. So I think they start to get excited about the idea of creating their own space and taking on the project, and also knowing that there's a potential to generate more income, and I think and like you said, and like Nick said, buyers now understand, like, of course I don't want to be locked in with a mortgage and having to be responsible for it. I will feel more comfortable knowing that my lender is going to use 75% of these rents that I'm getting. I'll be able to generate some additional income while also being able to take this project on, and the numbers just make more sense to them. I have a great handful of clients who are pre-approved or getting pre-approved for multifamilies, and I've always been an advocate for purchasing a multifamily first. That's what my foundation of morals I stand on. That's what my husband and I really, we stand by that. My husband wrote a whole book about it, Mortgage Before Marriage, about how important it is for your first property to be your most expensive property. As a first-time home buyer, they're practically throwing incentives at you for, low down payment options on a big home. So why not leverage that on the most expensive home, generate the income that you're going to be getting from this multifamily, and potentially purchase more homes? You're not going to make as much money paying a mortgage on a single family or condo than you would on a multifamily. So in the education piece and education component, while buyers are still trying to think about what they should buy, that's kind of the idea that we're putting out there and what's making the most sense for them, so that it creates more opportunity for them not only to have generational wealth, but to purchase more property. So I completely agree with that. That's been my experience personally in purchasing my first multifamily home, and that creating the opportunity for us to build our empire, to build our portfolio, to purchase more homes. So yeah, I'm in total agreement.
I love that. I love the fact that you had the experience to be able to like walk a buyer, because I'm like, I don't know, I like this and it looks pretty, but I only after I see it, So a
Right.
lot of people are that way. But having someone guide them to be able to be like, no, this is what this could look like, is like, that's huge. That's huge. So we're getting close to time. So I just wanted to see if you both could give me either a really interesting sort of tidbit or a story of a recent deal that a buyer could kind of learn from, or like your number one tip that you would give a home buyer.
My number one tip that I would give a home buyer is trust the process. To be honest, a lot, like Nick said, with the inventory being so low, a lot of buyers are seeing the same homes over and over and over again. And it might take that third time when they're looking at that home and they're like, you know what? Like, I'm so caught in my own head about it being turnkey, but this kitchen is amazing. If I take this wall down, I'll have the open concept that I'm looking for. The basement has potential to be finished. The city of Boston's giving me $50,000 to add an additional dwelling unit. Like, what was I thinking passing this up? And so I think not being afraid of the process and not being a little afraid of a little sweat equity, because again, with the inventory being so low, we're going to have to start being creative. And not every home that's been sitting on the market for 30 plus days means it's a bad home. It could be overpriced, right? Or, you know, there could be something that someone overlooked and that kind of made it a deal breaker, or it could have just been the time of when that property was listed. I had a home that was on the market for 50 days. I listed it around Christmas. Probably won't do that again. And when you list the home around the holidays, people are shopping, they're spending so much money, and they're spending their down payment on Christmas gifts. So I listed it around like November, December. It sat on the market for about 60 days. Once the holiday season smoothed, I like had one open house, and it was a zoo, and you would have thought it was a new listing. I was able to get it under agreement over list price, believe it or not, on a home that's been sitting on the market for 50 days. So trust the process. As a home buyer, don't get scared of how long a home's been on the market. Go in with an open mind and go in with the flexibility of knowing how to make this place your own and not going into a home thinking about someone who already lives there. So I think that would be my tip for home buyers, you know, when starting the home buying process.
Awesome. How about you, Nick? What's your number one tip?
So for me, I'd say there, just to play off what Joanna said, do not be afraid to make the first call. If you're thinking about buying a house, even if you think it's down the road, if you think it's a year from now, it's always a good time to have that first call with a lender. I think a lot of people, and even clients that do get in touch with me, they get stuck in this analysis paralysis of, you know, hey, before I do my app, I want it to be perfect. Should I pay off all my debt? No, because we haven't spoken yet. I don't know if your debt even matters to pay off. I don't want you to spend $20,000 paying off debt when, hey, if we just took the app and I looked at it and said, you know what, save that money for the down payment, because this debt, actually, you can get what you want without paying off that debt. At least have that initial conversation. I like to have a laid back conversation with clients at first, especially first time buyers, because I know they're just nervous enough just to make that phone call.
Right.
Once we get you in the door and we get your situation, we get your goals down, and we take an application, then we can start to work on it. You know, sometimes people take an application and they are perfect in the beginning, and that's great. It's really easy. They can get going, and sometimes they're not. But the application for a mortgage isn't, hey, your credit score is too low, I'm sorry, try again later. It's not like that. It's, hey, your credit score is too low because of this. We need to pay this off. We need to get this score here. Here's how long it might take, and let's start working on it. So when the time does come, you're ready. I've had clients in the past that, oh no, we don't want our credit pulled. We don't want to take an application yet. You know, I'll never forget this one client I had been in touch with it was a Thumbprint client, actually. I'd been in touch with them for maybe 6-7 months. Never wanted to take an application. I'll never forget it, because I bought a car that day. I'm pulling out of the lot, and they call me and say, we love this house. We just saw an open house. We love it. We want to make an offer. And when we went and pulled their credit that day, it was one of those situations where it's like, sorry, this is going to take 3 months to fix. We can't make an offer today. They eventually did, and they bought a house and they're happy, but we never want you to end up like that. You know,
Right.
When you're ready to buy, we want you to be ready.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing, like, it could be that you could potentially like qualify for something, like maybe a lower credit score product, right? But like, if you just do certain things and like listen to Nick, like, you can improve your credit, and then you could be getting a loan and especially when like every point of your credit score matters now. Like, instead of having to have, you know, a higher interest rate because your credit isn't that great, maybe you're able to then qualify. It's just, there's so much that is impacted by being able to have that conversation early. So absolutely. I love that tip. I love that tip. Well, I want to thank you both so much for your time. If you are interested in chatting with Joanna or Nick, do not hesitate to reach out to them. I will, of course, put all their information connected to this video. And thank you both again. You're both a wealth of knowledge, and so fun chatting with you.
Thank you so much, Liz. This was amazing. Nick's always a pleasure.